Guys, are UFC predictions useless, a waste of time, and most of the time inaccurate? I've been thinking about it. It's been a couple of days where I haven't been able to think of good video ideas that I'm really passionate about. I did record some videos and then I rewatched them and I was like, am I really that invested in this? You know what I'm saying? So I thought about it. What's a good UFC topic that people are not discussing? And I feel like this year with so many upsets happening in 2023, we all know that MMA is unpredictable. But I'm going to take it a step further. Are UFC predictions a waste of time? I feel like people watch UFC predictions just to confirm their biases, who they're favoring, you know, what they think. But at the end of the day, UFC predictions are useless and a waste of time. And I know a lot of people get their picks right once in a while and then they claim to know so much about MMA and to be UFC experts and that they know what's happening and stuff like that. But the reality is those people that keep it based, like myself, I don't claim to be a UFC expert. I don't claim to be this MMA analyst. I'm just a guy that loves UFC and I enjoy it and I've been watching it religiously for the last couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So I would consider myself a new fan and I've been able to learn what it takes to be an MMA fighter, the skills involved and stuff like that. And I'm still learning to this day, you know what I'm saying? But I've just realized that UFC predictions are stupid. Like predictions for fights are stupid because the reality is that as much as we want to play analysis and stats and the previous fights, you never know the factors that a fighter is going into a fight. We're not aware of a fighter's going in with an injury or he didn't have the best training camp or, you know what I'm saying? Or, maybe hasn't been doing that good in practice. Like how is, us YouTubers or just people that, don't really live with these fighters be aware of what these fighters go through. So I just feel like UFC predictions are dumb. And the reason I also thought about this is because right now, if you guys watch Lucas Tracy, I'm a fan of Lucas Tracy. He's been getting clowned on lately for his predictions. Some of them I feel like are pretty logical. Like, for example, the Dricus du Plessis. I mean, who really gave Dricus du Plessis a chance of beating Robert Whittaker? And it's kind of crazy because I felt like prior to the Dricus du Plessis fight, everybody talked about Robert Whittaker as everyone's kryptonite. Man, this guy can beat everyone at middleweight. He just needs to beat Israel Adesanya. He's that guy. He's everyone's kryptonite. Like I remember when there was rumors of a potential Hamza Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker fight. People were so quick to be like, "Oh, Robert Whittaker is gonna destroy Hamza Chimaev. Oh, Hamza Chimaev is gonna get fraud checked. Hamza Chimaev has nothing for Robert Whittaker." And I remember thinking, I was like, I don't know about that, man. Robert Whittaker is kind of chinny. He hasn't faced a grappler to the level of Hamza Chimaev, who's so persistent, who's so strong, and so good on the ground. And also, Hamza Chimaev has shown that he has middleweight power. Like he could sit somebody down with one punch. I mean, we saw what he did to Mershard. So I just thought that I thought Robert Whittaker was becoming a bit overhyped. Don't get me wrong. I was one of those people that picked Robert Whittaker to school Dricus du Plessis, but it wasn't necessarily because I thought Robert Whittaker was this invincible. The way the MMA community talked about Robert Whittaker was in this sense of like, this guy's everyone's kryptonite. Khamzat Chimaev doesn't have a chance. This guy, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like there was still holes in there that could be capitalized. But the reason I didn't pick Dricus du Plessis to win that fight is because I thought Dricus du Plessis looked terrible against Derek Brunson. He looked okay against Darren Till. I mean, Darren Till looked terrible. So I didn't really take too much away from that fight. But it just kind of put everything in perspective of how, in reality, UFC predictions are useless. They're useless, and as much as we want to go back and rewatch old fights and pick out the little details, at the end of the day, we don't know how the fighter's going to show up the night of the fight. We don't know what's really going on. If the day of the fight the fighter isn't feeling that well and the other guy ends up winning and you pick the other guy to win, you're gonna claim, oh man, I knew it, I'm such a great predictor, I'm the best predictor on YouTube. No, you're not, man. You just got lucky. Like, let's be real. Like, there's no pattern to this. Random things just happen. I mean, think about, we were talking about that Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland fight. We were all under the impression, we were all so confident that Israel Adesanya was going to school Sean Strickland, that he was not going to have anything for Sean Strickland on the feet. I mean, Sean Strickland wasn't going to have anything for Israel Adesanya on the feet. He was going to get leg kicked to smithereens. He was going to get knocked out inside the distance. You know, Israel Adesanya was going to knock him out. Why did people say that? Why did we say that? Well, because we've seen Sean Strickland get knocked out by Alex Pereira. You know, he's coming off beating an unranked fighter who had no cardio in Magomedov, and then Israel Adesanya is coming off knocking out Alex Pereira, right? So, you know, you take all those factors prior to UFC 293, and everybody's like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that Israel Adesanya is most likely gonna knock out Sean Strickland, and then we see the fight, and we're like, well, Sean Strickland just schooled Israel Adesanya. You know what I'm saying? So that's just kind of shows us that no one can. You know what I'm saying? Like, we could understand what is happening in a fight, and we could understand fighters' strengths and weaknesses, but what ends up happening at the night of the fight is anybody's guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I have friends, for example, that are not that into UFC, but they know some of the fighters. They know like Sean O'Malley, Israel Adesanya, and I remember at before UFC 292, one of my friends that watches UFC but doesn't watch it like we do, like the hardcore fans. You know, he knows about Sean O'Malley, and he didn't know anything about Aljamain Sterling. He picked Sean O'Malley to win that fight, and I picked Aljamain Sterling. So when Sean O'Malley won, he was quick to say, "Oh man, I knew it. I knew he was gonna win." But it's like, no, you didn't. I mean, you didn't know how good Aljamain Sterling won. Just because you picked Sean O'Malley doesn't know. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's never about who you pick to win a fight. It's always about the breakdown, about the reasoning why you're picking a certain fighter to win a fight. And I think that that kind of gets lost in the fact that people are so quick to be like, oh, you got a pick wrong. You got the pick wrong. Okay, but look at the arguments that were made for that pick. Look, did they mention that the other fighter had possibilities of winning that fight, their strengths and weaknesses? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think people are so quick to trash someone, especially if you're recording on YouTube and you're putting your predictions out there to the public. People are so quick to come back and tell you that you had an L pick, but at the end of the day, like when they get a bad pick, they're not out there talking about it. Most people just stay quiet when they get a pick wrong, but when they get a pick right, people are so be like, oh look, I know what I'm talking about. No, you don't. You don't know what you're talking about. And you just got lucky. I mean, it's two fighters. It happened in that octagon, and if you end up choosing the fighter who is gonna end up winning, I mean, good for you, but that doesn't make you a UFC expert or MMA expert, because I don't truly believe in that. I think we're just all fans. I love the sport. Some of us are a little bit more we understand a little bit more of the sport. I haven't been watching that sport for that long. I mean, I've been watching it for the past 3 4 years, but I haven't been watching it like some of the other channels out there that have been watching it for decades or since it first started and stuff like that. So um, a lot of my research has been me going back to rewatch old fights and really try to get an understanding. But it's never even going back to rewatch fights, you're never really gonna understand the context of when that fight was taking place, the fights at those, like the time period. You know what I'm saying? Like obviously you go back to get some idea of the fighters, their strengths and weaknesses, but you're never gonna get the context of like, oh, they were coming off a win, the short notice. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of things that you don't take into consideration. For example, like 10 years from now, people are gonna see, man, Sean Strickland beat Israel Adesanya. But some of us, you know, the ones that saw it live, we're gonna understand, well, it was a short notice fight for Sean Strickland. The fight got announced a month out. You know what I'm saying? The whole controversy with the dog. You know what I'm saying? Like 15 years from now, people are just gonna see, you know, they're just gonna see Sean Strickland beat Israel Adesanya on a UFC webpage, and they're not gonna understand the context of it. So I just think UFC predictions are pretty much useless. You know, I think picking fighters, who's gonna win, I think they're pretty much useless, and most of the time they end up being wrong. As much as we would like to think, not as much as we would like to think that we know the future and how the fighter's gonna show up. We only know the strengths and weaknesses and patterns. That's the only thing. You know, that's pretty much a UFC prediction. You're just pretty much analyzing fighters' patterns and picking the most probable outcome that might happen in the fight. But at the end of the day, it's still a fight. You know what I'm saying? So anything crazy could happen, guys. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that. I know that it's not like the most exciting video, There's no UFC this weekend either, so it kind of bummed me out. But yeah, guys, that's kind of my thought. Let me know what you guys think. Like, let me know what you guys think. If you guys think UFC predictions are useless, if people kind of put too much emphasis on who they pick to win a fight, and if they win or lose, like, who cares, man? Who cares? That's why I don't think people should bet on UFC fights. I think it's, imagine the people that bet on Alexa Grasso versus Valentina and then ended up being a split draw. Like, who would have predicted that? No one. You know what I'm saying? So even the fights that people feel like, they might have a good grasp of what might end up happening, most of the time they don't. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time they don't. So, and also you always got to make sure to go back to watch the fights yourself instead of just listening to what other YouTubers are saying out there. Because I remember, for example, I like to bring up this fight a lot. Like the Benil Dariush versus Charles Oliveira fight was one of those fights that I was starting to first, like, when the fight, I think it was around May, like a month out before the fight. I was starting to think, yeah, I mean, I think Benil Dariush is gonna get it done against Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira got hurt against Islam Makhachev. Benil Dariush is also a southpaw, has pretty good BJJ skills. So I thought, I think Benil Dariush is gonna win, yada yada. And then he was coming off that really good performance against Gamrot. But then I went back to really watch Benil Dariush's fight, not just listen to what another YouTuber was gonna say, and pretty much just hop on that mindset or that idea. And I realized that Benil Dariush was like super unathletic, very slow twitch, hadn't fought anybody to that pressure like Charles Oliveira. So I saw all these things and I felt like people were just basing it on the moment. And like, for example, another fight that I kind of got wrong was the Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev fight, where I thought, Justin Gaethje's coming off getting, hurt really bad by Charles Oliveira, where he got dropped for the first time. Like, really, I mean, I think he's been dropped before, but he got like knocked on his ass pretty much. And then Charles Oliveira was able to get the submission. And I just thought, you know what? Justin Gaethje has taken a lot of damage in his career. I don't really see him coming back against Fiziev and, being able to survive like against Fiziev. I thought Fiziev was going to knock him out because I thought Fiziev, he's younger, very fast twitch, really good body kicks, really good Muay Thai fighter. And then we saw what ended up happening. Justin Gaethje is better than we thought. And now look how people talk about Justin Gaethje. Prior to the Justin Gaethje, prior to the Fiziev fight, we all talked about Gaethje as in like, oh man, this guy's done. This guy's done. Charles Oliveira put a number on him. He got choked out by Khabib. He went to war with Dustin Poirier. He went to war with Tony Ferguson. We thought, Justin Gaethje's at the end of his career. And now look how we talking about him. He's coming off knocking out Dustin Poirier. Now Justin Gaethje is one of the best strikers in the lightweight division. So it just shows you how, at the end of the day, nobody knows anything about UFC because we really can't know what the fighter's doing at practice, if they're getting better, they're getting worse, if they're invested, if they're not, how are they mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We don't know any of that stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I just kind of wanted to point that out there, guys. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.